The Girl Without a Sound is a children's book that explores a wonderful story of a little girl trying to find her way in a very complicated and noisy world. I'm joined in studio by the author, Buhle Ngaba, who's going to tell us a little bit more about this very special and important project. Buhle, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So, The Girl Without a Sound came and made waves on the internet, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to just start with, you know, what is the motivation? Firstly, let's get down to it. What is the story about?
I really just feel like the way that you described it was perfect, you know. If I think only the people who probably have read it would understand what I mean by it's definitely a children's tale, but it's also a story for all, let's say, black women who have been that little girl before, you know. So what you said about a girl who's in search of her own voice, you know, that's exactly what it is.
Right. So the project is very unique in that it's not necessarily something that has been tangible. It's happened quite quickly, and a beautiful team has come together to make this work.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what was the motivation around making this work?
I am so happy I'm here and that I get to explain this because in other interviews I haven't had the opportunity to get personal about it, but I have to point out that this book came out of nowhere for me too. And the one thing that we haven't had the opportunity to say all together as a team is we made this happen in 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks exclude the 2 days that I took to write it before that period started. I wrote a story for somebody extremely special in my life, my godmother, and so the story is loosely based on us. And I wrote it, I printed it for her, I put out just the title, The Girl Without a Sound, on social media, just, you know, for fun. Next thing I know, people are like, hey, where do we publish the book? And I was like, okay, this is definitely a piece of paper with ribbon on it and punch holes. And then I was like, instead of saying the book isn't available, I started to think about, okay, cool, so if I were to produce this book, what would I do? And I knew that I only had 3 weeks because I had to be in Joburg for something else, so it had to be people who weren't scared and who could do it now. And because I was so clear, because of the nature of it being a story loosely, very loosely now based on my life, it needed to be with women of color. And it is because of that choice and me clearly choosing Mika and making this black little girl the protagonist in a fairy tale, that's how it's a response to Cinderella, to Snow White, to etc., etc.
Why do you think, you know, there has been such an amazing response to this? You mentioned that it was something that happened in a quiet moment with yourself and really has resonated with people across the globe, you know. And what do you think is that gap that a story like this is filling?
You know, what I said earlier about it's written for children but also for all of us who have been that black little girl, I think we've all had moments where, undoubtedly, by the nature of your being, you know, you've had moments where you felt voiceless, where you felt silenced in some way or the other. And the point is, this story, it's open-ended, it's easy to understand, it's simple, you know. My editor, Sarah Quipman, who's also amazing and really turned it into something else, she said something so interesting to me when she picked up the first edit. She said, Buhle, it's so gorgeous and it's amazing, but if you really want to, what you're dealing with is philosophical, almost understandings of things. So if you really, really want to write it for children also, then imagine that you're explaining it to a 6-year-old. And there's a saying, you know, if you really want to know if you understand something, put it in the simplest way.